بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. We give thanks and adorations to Almighty Allah, and we seek benedictions and blessings upon the noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our topic for today, distinguished listeners, our topic for today is thinking begins in the heart. Thinking begins in the heart. Some may be thinking that, how can one start thinking from the heart? How can you start your thinking from the heart before you do anything instead of the brain? Now, I explain things to you. Under this topic, we have two questions. Is it really think before you do, or feel before you say? We have two things. Is it really think before you do, or feel before you say? Now, before we answer that question, we'll be going into what the Quran says about that. In Quran 22 verse 46, that is in Surah Al-Hajj. It says, أَفَلَمْ يَسِيرُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ فَتَكُونَ لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ يَعْقِلُونَ بِهَا أَوْ آذَانٌ يَسْمَعُونَ بِهَا. Haven't they traveled in the lands that their hearts might understand or reason, and their ears might listen? This verse alone makes us understand that traveling, undertaking travels to acquire insight into things and to learn lessons from the past or from events or occurrences in the past is among the religious objectives expected of a Muslim. The verse encourages traveling, going around the world, exploring, provided the person traveling keeps his eyes wide open. You are keeping your eyes wide open, but you're not imbibing into your mind the lessons of the history. How do you understand what the history is talking about? While keeping your eyes wide open, you should also imbibe in your mind the lessons of the history. That is why Quran says, فإنها لا تعمى الأبصار ولكن تعمى القلوب التي في الصدور. For verily, it is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts that are within the breast. What it's trying to explain to us there is that you are keeping your eyes wide open, you are just looking at it, you're not having any feeling about what you're looking at. Yoruba people will say, kò sí ìmọ̀ kankan àyàfi pẹ̀lú ìwòye sí. Téèyàn bá ti lè ní ìwòye sí nǹkan, if you cannot have an insight into something, there is no how you can learn something from it. It is the fact. The verse is suggesting that a person can gain knowledge and intelligence by a careful study of the history of people who have inhabited a particular place in the world, or places in the world rather. Every event of history holds a lesson for a person who have an insight. For a person who has an insight, a history holds a lesson for such a person. And anyone who does not regard a history as a mere record of episodes and occurrences sees a lot of lessons to learn from it. If you do not regard a history as a mere record, just a mere record of episodes, this one is just an occurrence. Now, what should I learn from it? You are just looking at it merely. If you are not having an insight into it, you can never learn anything from it. There's a particular book written by Ibn Abi Hatim. The book is termed At-Tafakkur. The book made us understand an incident that occurred when Allah commanded Sayyidina Musa alayhi salatu wasalam to wear shoes made of iron and to hold in his hand a staff made of iron and travel around the earth until his shoes would be worn out and his staff would be broken down. When we look into this statement now, when we look into this, we try to see that It is encouraging us to acquire knowledge and gain lessons from the past. Let us look into it to the extent that you won't find anything you don't know about that particular thing. You gain insight into things. Look at things very well. Think about them. Feel about them from the depth of your heart. From the depth of your heart, to try to think about things. The heart are the main source of reasoning. Rationally, the rationality has been associated with the heart because no organs works if the heart doesn't. If everything in the heart stops working, automatically all the organs stop working. If the pulse of the body stops, if the pulse stops in the body, the person is already dead. The person is considered dead. So no organs work if the heart doesn't. Other parts of the body do not react to stimuli if the heart doesn't. Feelings precede thinking. The heart is known to be the root of everything, that is, the root of the actions carried out. Just as we already know that all things start from the root. You can't decide to eat a fruit and you won't plant a seed. You plant the seed, water the seed very well. What you feel is what you usually say. What you have said is what you've already felt about before saying it. Another place in the Holy Quran, Allah says in Quran 26, verse 88 to 89, the day when there will not be benefit, that where wealth and children will not benefit anyone, but only one who comes to Allah with a sound heart. If you have a damaged heart, and it makes a lot of difference in you. If you have a damaged heart, it makes a lot of difference. It leads you to the right path. You just do things anyhow. You do things disorderly. You don't do things in the right way. The Quran is making us understand again that in Quran 47 verse 24 that then do they not reflect upon the Quran, or are there locks upon their hearts? This implies that one cannot even reflect if one's heart is locked. Perhaps you should try to think with an open heart instead of an open mind, because if the heart is open, eventually the mind will open too, because thinking sprouts from the heart. Great minds think of great things. The heart is the source of imagination. In a hadith also, the Prophet said, Allah has forgiven my nation for the evil suggestion of their heart, so as long as they do not act upon it or speak of it, and for what they are forced to do. This is making us know that there is a difference between the head and the heart. Mind, the thought of the mind can never gain dominance over the emotions, but rather we have to increase the balance between the two. Allah do not look at your bodies or your faces. He looks into your heart. The feelings therein. You can't have a sweet fruit with a bitter root. Remember I said the heart is the root of all actions. You cannot have a bitter root and have a sweet fruit. Abu Huraira, he narrated that I came to the Prophet ﷺ and spread out my garment to him. Then he took it and gathered it at my heart. So I did not forget after that any hadith. When we look into this hadith very well, let's go back into memorization of the Holy Quran. What do they say? You know it by heart. You memorized by heart. They didn't say you memorized by mind. When you keep cramming, la cram la po, you tend to forget things easily. But you are knowing something by heart. It is always too difficult. With the help of Allah, it's always too difficult to forget that particular thing. Even in the scientific view, The heart is known to sense emotional information 5 to 7 seconds even before it happens. But the brain senses it 3 to 5 seconds. Can you see the differences now? Can you see it? The heart senses things 5 to second seconds while the brain senses it 3 to 5 seconds. So it is not only that emotions are important contributors to our output of thought, but they may be one of the best ways to influence and create a change in what and how we think. Like I said before, when the root is sweet, the fruit will also be sweet. A bitter root can never sprout out to be a sweet fruit. A bitter root can never sprout out to be a sweet fruit. The heart is known to be an endocrine gland. It was reclassified by the scientists as an endocrine gland. When a new hormone, there's a particular hormone we call atrial natriuretic factor, ANF. It affects the blood vessels, the kidneys, the adrenal glands, and the regulatory organs in the brain. For you to know how effective the heart is, even scientifically, it is that hormone, the natriuretic factor, the ANF, the atrial natriuretic factor. It is the one that affects those particular parts in the body, even the brain, even the regulatory regions in the brain. This hormone is produced by what? It's produced by the heart. And it was also discovered that the heart contains a cell known as the intrinsic cardiac adrenergic ICA. That one, it synthesizes and releases neurotransmitters. We all know neurotransmitters. They really they do a great work in responding to stimuli. Some people thought these neurotransmitters are only produced by neurons in the brain. Not at all. These neurotransmitters you see, they are released by that intrinsic cardiac adrenergic produced by the heart. So the heart starts beating in an unborn fetus. A fetus is known to be a baby, a newly born baby. The heart starts beating even before the brain forms. This is a process called autorhythmic by the scientists. Can you see now? Can we, when we look into these things now, this is coming into a conclusion that it is not that the brain does not have a purpose in our lives. But with all these things we've mentioned from the Quran, from the Hadith, from the scientific view, you should know that you have to water the root first before you get your fruit. You don't cut off the connection with your heart merely because you want to be logical, you want people to know that you don't cut off the connection. You feel first. Do not bury your thoughts under the debris of darkness. There is still time for you to rethink, for you to redo things in the right way. Create a connection